Welcome to the Groff Show podcast. This is episode 14. I'm your host, Jackson Groff, former University of Montana wide receiver and currently student assistant at the University of Montana for football. I'm a senior this year in journalism. Woo-hoo, thank God. Expected to graduate in May as well. A little different intro for this podcast as well. I'm going to start incorporating myself at the beginning and the end of the podcast so you guys get familiar with me. I know I don't really talk about myself that much. It's more about the guests and our conversation and our relationship and stuff like that. But I wanted to talk about myself a little bit. So to prep you for this episode, we play Eastern Washington this week. We just came off a nice bye, a nice Thanksgiving. Hope everyone's Thanksgiving was amazing. Ate so much food, took a big old food nap after. It was great. We were blessed. We were ranked 6th in the FCS tournament, blessed to have playoffs, blessed to still be playing. I say blessed, because we blessed, baby. You obviously know, you see it. We own the state. You know what I'm saying? Beat the Cats, defeated the Cats, absolutely crapped on them. I'm not going to use the language, crapped on them. And yeah, it was a good week to get healthy. The team looks great. And we play Eastern Washington this week, Friday night. It's going to be a packed house, a rematch, Grizz versus Eagles 2.0. If you haven't already, make sure to follow the Groff Show on IG for exclusive content. We post a lot of stuff on there weekly. We, meaning myself, I'm a one-man show. The Groff Show podcast is proud to be sponsored by Skyline Sports. Skyline Sports is an online multimedia content production organization providing comprehensive coverage of Big Sky Conference. You like that. The Groff Show is proud to partner with Skyline Sports, your go-to source for all things Grizz and Big Sky Conference football. Be sure to visit skylinesportsmt.com today. The link will be down below. Without further ado, enjoy the episode. Welcome back. Another Groff Show episode, episode number 14. We got a special guest, special week as Montana prepares to play Eastern. No one else I'd rather have on than former Washington quarterback in 2003. He is the current studio analyst and color commentator at Root Sports. He's known as the voice of the Big Sky Conference football, the one and only Taylor Barton. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, how about that? We got a Big Sky matchup in the playoffs.
I'm wearing this 406 hat because we do own the state, but I'll try not to be a little biased. But I wanted to talk about just kind of a little intro about yourself. Talk a little about like your playing time at University of Washington. You played there in 2003. I apologize for Wazoo. That's upsetting and us beating them. But yeah, just kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah, Tom needled me in our broadcasts of our Montana games. He had to keep bringing up that UW victory. But, hey, Montana went in and when that Bobby Houck, obviously very familiar there, Bobby had recruited me out of high school. So I actually –
oh, wow. I did not know that.
98, I signed with University of Colorado. Rick Neuheisel was the head coach. Bobby Houck was his right-hand man, like his recruiting guy. And so I got very familiar with Bobby. I signed with Colorado. We were Big 12 at the time. My first year left. So I went down to San Francisco City College, played there for a year. Then I signed with UW, finished up, and Bobby was on that staff with Rick at UW.
Okay.
So that was kind of my playing career and just kind of the time with Bobby. And then I went, when my career was done, and I GA'd at Oregon State for a year. So now Colorado being in the Pac-12, 3 of the Pac-12 schools, I played at 2, coached at 1. So, have good times with that conference. And then the Big Sky, so many of the coaches that are there were coaches, at Brent Myers at Weber State. He was, at UW when I played there. So, Bobby at Montana. So either guys that coached me or guys that I played with or, against that are now, coaching in the league. So it's been really fun in the Big Sky for me to get familiar doing the broadcast the last few years with all the programs. And the Montana State rivalry and game is, I tell people, like, put that on your bucket list in your lifetime. Get to a Brawl of the Wild game in person. I think Missoula, both are incredible environments. Missoula at that last game was incredible, but
unreal.
Yeah, pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah. So as you said, you GA'd at Oregon State. What did you end up doing? Did you end up doing color commentating after that? Where did the idea of wanting to be a color commentator and like be with Root Sports come to tuition?
It was interesting because I do work in the off season. I run events, 7-on-7 tournaments. I do college showcases. I do QB training. And so I'm working with all these kids, and then I'm working with the colleges because they're recruiting the kids, and the kids and families want to help the colleges. So, and I'm dealing with media. So I'm kind of like connected to everyone. And so I had a guy, I was living in Oregon at the time, that said, you know, hey, would you like to maybe do a radio game with me, high school in Oregon? And so I did that for a year, and then I got reached out to by the head guy at Root, and just ask if, you know, we talked, and then ask if I'd come in the studio and do a run through. And so I went in there for my first couple of years and was in studio, doing everything and doing breakdowns, you know, pre-game, in-game, halftime, post-game analysis, all that. And then about 4 years ago, they sent me, or 5 years ago, sent me to do One Big Sky color commentary, you know, to just kind of get broken into that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, now the rest is history. The last few years I've been doing every game of it. And so it's a lot of fun. I mean, I love it. I'm watching games anyway, right? I mean, you're a football junkie, you're watching these games. If someone wants to come and pay you and say, hey, we'd love to come pay you to just talk about the game, what you're seeing, I was like, this is a layup. Like, this is ever. So I'm a little different though. And I think I come from a different perspective because I'm not trying to do this full time and be the goat at it. I just love doing this, and it ties in with other things I do in business. So it makes it really fun because I get to say what I say, be who I am, and I don't really care. And so it's kind of a freeing feeling. Truthfully. And so I just get to go do these games. And I mean, look, I got to be at Brawl of the Wild. I've done Eastern Washington for state games. You know, it's really cool to go see all the different campuses and stadiums and the games and talk to the coaches and, you know, see guys go on and take bigger jobs. And it's a fun conference to cover for sure.
Well, especially it helps too when it's an all expense trip. I'm assuming that Root Sports pays for all of that. You don't have to really pay for much.
They don't pay for my poker losses for some reason. I was like, hey, okay, so who gives me the money I lost in poker? Some reason they weren't having that. But I mean, when I come into town in Montana, I always take the earliest Friday morning flight. So when I first came into the studio, they'd fly in late Friday night, the latest flight. They'd get in and do the game Saturday. I'm like, no, I want the earliest Friday morning flight because I want to get there at 9 a.m.
Yeah, I always see you out of practices and stuff. Yeah.
I want to go talk to the coaches. I want to go watch the walkthrough. And then that night I go to the visiting team hotel and meet with their coaches because we do a conference call each week. But I know those coaches dread those calls. They don't like going and dealing with the media, and they're not going to be honest and open. They're just going to be very vanilla and bland. I go in, when I do a Montana game, I go in and sit in for about 20 to 30 minutes with Bobby Houck, one-on-one, feet kicked up on the, I know him very well, but Montana State, it was in with Vegan when we did their game. And then they open up, when you sit with an O coordinator, a recruiting coordinator, a head coach, and you're talking one-on-one in person and you have a relationship, they do start talking about the game and some strategy they have or things they saw or, recruiting stuff that I have to balance when I do the games. I can't go out there and say certain things on air that they've told me, but I definitely can have some insight and come at from some angles that maybe if I was just on a conference call, I wouldn't have gotten. So it's enjoyable and I have fun doing it.
So talking about that, I guess, what's kind of the hardest part and some of the fun things you do behind the scenes? I mean, it's dope that you get to talk to both coaches, but how hard is it to maybe not spoil something for the other coach? Like maybe like Vegan says, oh, Afonte's hurt. We all knew he was kind of banged up, but we didn't think he was gonna be that banged up. But kind of talk about that for both sides and kind of not ruining your relationship with them, because you got to have a good relationship with all of them to maintain and stuff.
And it's a very sensitive thing because it's like credibility in anything, right? You can build up credibility over 10 years of doing something. And then one thing you do that's off, I mean, it's credibility gone. Someone can't trust, right? I mean, I love my wife and I love her. But if she cheats on me, like we're done. Like it's we've been married for 10 years. And if that happens, you're going to lose the ability, not only with that coach and the staff, but you're burning ties across the board because now everyone else knows like, hey man, like you can't talk to this guy or this group because they're going to put your business out in the street. So there are things that on the conference call when we do, which we usually do Tuesday or Wednesday of a game week, you get some information, some injury stuff, some players that are in or out, and you can always tell the coaches that have more experience with it because the veteran coaches know us, know our production team. And so they just will talk because they know everything they're telling us is kind of off record. It's not being repeated, but the new ones always are going, now this stays between us. Right. And so it's just it's a funny thing. But there's information. I mean, I've had years, I remember a couple of years ago, we did an Eastern Washington game and Gage Gabrud, he was getting surgery that next Monday. So he was for sure out of the game, but we're talking to their opponent and the coach is talking about the game plan and, for Gage and all this and that. And I'm sitting there like, man,
he's not playing. I wanted to talk more about your color commentating. I know you travel a lot. We all know Missoula is your favorite place to go and commentate. Like, come on, like, let's be honest here. Why is that? And what are some other places you like? And what's your least favorite as well?
So I'll start on the back end of that. I don't have a least favorite because I'm like a guy who just finds enjoyment in everything. I'm going to enjoy being places, talking to people. If I don't vibe with someone, okay, then I don't have to interact with them. If I didn't like a place that I ate at, okay, cool. I didn't like it. I tried it. I know I'll go try a new spot. But as far as Missoula, it's an amazing town. I actually was just telling people, I've talked to my wife about potentially even, moving out there. I love the state of Montana. The city of Missoula is absolutely incredible. And the food spots, I mean, Notorious PIG, awesome. The burnt ends, the pulled pork sandwich. I've eaten at in Bozeman and Missoula. We've done so many games out there that, I've managed to hit up a lot of different spots, and I don't think I've missed on one. I can't think of the spot, but the breakfast burrito that is
Market on Front,
unbelievable. Like that's when I would catch a flight to Montana literally just to go eat that freaking breakfast burrito to fly back home. It's that
Chipotle sauce is just it's so good.
Yep, off
the charts. So I wanted to talk about the Brawl of the Wild. Obviously, that was such a special game for Montana, and just kind of talk about the prep that you did for that, kind of the behind the scenes work. Because I know, it's a lot of work you guys do, and I did some color commentating and some like announcing for like softball and soccer games. So I definitely know how tough it is, but obviously yours is on a larger scale. So.
Yeah, it's all relative. I can think I'm doing a lot, and then you go see someone doing, a Big 12 game or a NFL game or Super Bowl. I think for the week, it's kind of a balance of, the prep of watching film. Some teams, some levels, it's easier to get more film and better film than others, but it's a balance of watching film and also getting online and getting articles. Like we have really good producers at Root. So we have a couple different ones. So I'll know during the games throughout the year who's producing what game. And then leading up to that game, they'll send links of articles from the different teams on certain players, the coaches, so it's a combination of watching film myself, doing research myself, pulling things up on the coaches, on the programs, on, whatever it is, having our producer send us some different stuff. And then also the Big Sky does a good job of putting out, a notebook each week that has the matchups of teams and kind of their, different records and stats of players, teams, and then overall the conference and all the awards that were handed out, weekly. So I think the Big Sky Conference does a really good job of promoting itself, making it, easy for guys like myself to do our job. And I thought Big Sky Conference, I was so hoping game day came to Missoula.
Man.
And I think in hindsight, they wish they would too. I mean, 49-0 at halftime of the game, they were, hyping up compared to all of the Wild. And that environment, that was the loudest I've heard it in Washington Grizzly Stadium. In all the years I've done games, that game at times, I mean, I've been where the Seahawks play. I played at Nebraska.
Louder than Washington. Not gonna lie. At least my experience at Washington wasn't that loud. Maybe because it was a close game, but.
Well, and sometimes I think people get it twisted. Just because a stadium holds more people doesn't mean it's even loud. I mean, I remember my senior year at Washington, we played at Michigan, and at that time it was the largest attendance ever at a game. It was like 111,000, and it was an afternoon game, and it wasn't even really that loud. Yeah. And when I was at Colorado, we played at Kansas State, and I think it was like 40-some thousand people, maybe 50,000, and like it felt like the turf was shaking. It was so loud, So I think how big a stadium is and how many people can be in there, that's awesome. But I'll take 26,000 rabid fans at a Brawl of the Wild game any day over some stadium that holds 60,000, but only gets 14,000 people there, and they don't care.
You personally, I mean, you studied Montana and our season and stuff like that. I just wanted to hear your perspective on what you thought about Montana's season this year. Like, what are some things you like?
So I can tell you this. You talk about Bobby Houck, and we do our calls with him. I'd meet with him, and there's certain things he's a pretty straight shooter on. Some things, Bobby never lies. He just doesn't always divulge all the information. So you got to kind of listen to sometimes his tone and angle. But he was saying it from the first time we talked to him, like, this is the best defense I've ever had here. And he said it last week. And I think, you've seen what they've done all year, but especially the last few games. I mean, that defense is physical and fast and disciplined and smart, and they've got all the pieces. I mean, there is no weakness there. You don't put on that film, nothing. Usually when I watch film, there's always something that'll stand out. Hey, this corner is vulnerable. This front is pretty soft. Hey, this linebacking crew is good in run game, but, they're susceptible in the pass game. Montana's defense, you look at them and you're like, there are no weaknesses. Pick your poison. What do you want to do that's not going to work against them? It's going to take for a team to beat Montana. My worry when Montana is not defense, I'll tell you that. But any great defense, if your offense doesn't help you out, at some point, it doesn't matter. You're eventually, especially in the playoffs against good teams, gonna give up points at some point. So defense, awesome. I mean, Robbie Houck, what he does from that safety position, I mean, he is
no fear.
No fear at all, man. I mean, this is the dude that, like, if you're up with your friends rock climbing and, everyone's like, oh, there's water down there, we should jump. No, it's too far. I mean, he's the first guy jumping before you even finish a sentence. He's just like, head first, I'm going, YOLO. And but he plays physical and fast and all that, but it's not reckless. I mean, it's smart how he plays. He knows when to fly down. He knows when to, play a little bit more finesse. So that whole defense is pretty incredible. Kicker, I mean, what you saw him do in the Brawl of the Wild, I mean, that's a weapon to be able to be that.
He's an Arizona boy. I'm not gonna lie. I gotta shout him out. He's from Arizona. That's where I'm from. So
there you go. Yeah,
got to show up.
Arizona, there's a lot of talent in that state recruiting wise, but my worries with Montana is offensively, and it's frankly at the QB position. Is Cam is capable of playing at a really high level and winning any game, but he's also capable of making some bad decisions, some bad throws, some bad reads, and you can get away with that if you're just superior to the team you're playing. You're playing against a Southern Utah. You're playing against a Northern Colorado or a Portland State. Montana's roster, you take them 100 out of 100 times against those teams. But now you say, okay, hey, against Eastern Washington, or against some of the other powerhouses, North Dakota States of the world. Now you look at those rosters and you're like, hey, I mean, maybe I'd still take Montana's, but it's not a layup like that. So, hey, in a title fight, I always say in boxing, in the title fight, the other guy's in the ring for a reason too. So you can't expect you're just going to knock him out and get all the punches. He's going to get some on you too. When you get to the playoffs and you're going to make a run down the stretch. They're there for a reason too, what they did in regular season and through the playoffs. So all of a sudden interceptions or taking an unnecessary sack or not getting in the right protection or run check or just missing an open guy, whatever it is, where you could overcome that against inferior, opponents. At this point, you can't. So I think if Montana is going to go win a national championship, I think Canada is going to have to play at his A game level all the way throughout. I don't think he has the ability, and Montana has the ability for him to play at that kind of C plus B minus, level, and for them to be holding the trophy at the end of the year.
As we continue on here, I know Roo Sports unfortunately isn't covering the playoffs for the FCS. So now you're a spectator. What are your thoughts on like the FCS bracket and some of the, because there's 4 Big Sky teams that are playing this weekend, 2 that are playing each other. So
it's pretty crazy. And I mean, to see Montana and, Eastern, and what a good game that was in the regular season. And, now here they come back in the playoffs and they're meeting up. I mean, it's unfortunate to me. I wish the Big Sky teams, would only see each other in the semis or championship. Ultimately there's only so many teams in the playoffs. And if it's that many Big Sky, they're going to play each other. And that's just like the NFL. You might have a division opponent you're playing twice, and now you play them in the first, round of playoffs. It is what it is. Just, you got to go do your thing. I think the Big Sky, I think it's a really good chance that one of the teams ends up making a run and going and winning it. I just do, with the talent of the teams that are in it. And I think there's been years past where there was such a clear-cut team where it was like everyone's playing for second. I think this is a year that it's open. There's a chance that a Big Sky team can go, make a run and end up being the champions at the end of the year. And not saying that winner of Eastern and Montana is my favorite out of that, but man, I the winner of that I wouldn't want to bet against.
Yeah, exactly. Who are some of your key players on both sides for Eastern and Montana? Obviously that game, it's a big matchup on Friday night, which will be rocking at Grizz. It's gonna be cold, but hopefully it's packed out. So
well, it's going to be a lot different than when they played at Eastern, where the environment, I mean, Eastern, I love the Inferno. It's cool, cool turf. It's, but it's not Washington Grizzly. It's just not. It's not, packed in like, Eastern has open end zones, the visitor size not very, big. Washington Grizzly, I mean, it's packed in. You look around in any 360 degrees and it's fans, it's stands. And it's going to be loud. The weather is definitely going to be a factor. So it's going to be a way different environment than the regular season game. But I think, I mean, you always are going to look at quarterback play, especially at this time of year, because that matters. In today's game, maybe back in the day, a quarterback is like, hey, just do a good job handing off or making sure you're pitching to the right spot. Now, I mean, offenses are just, they revolve around a quarterback, and especially an offense like Eastern, and what they do. So I look at quarterback play, and without a doubt, the advantage goes to Eastern. But Montana's offense is a little bit different, in what they're asking their quarterback to do. So I look at the quarterback play and say, can Barrier go in to a hostile environment in, tough weather conditions against a defense that is playing lights out? And when a defense is playing lights out, the swag and confidence they have, like that's what you seeing, because they just think everything they're going to do is right. And when someone's that confident, that's hard to play, man.
Especially Justin Ford, and his energy is just like, it's contagious and stuff like that.
You said it. It's just, it's infectious. And I mean, that defense, those guys, I mean, just the way they're like, it's just 11 alphas all there in unison. I mean, it's something crazy. And, that's going to be tough for Eastern to go in and compete against. And I think for them too, having, getting some shots against, Montana, where it's like, hey, maybe you don't put up the kind of numbers that you normally do, but you had a couple big strikes, you know, and we'll see. I mean, it's going to be interesting. And for Montana, you know, you always talk about establishing the ground game. I think the game has changed now. You can establish a ground game by getting your passing game going now. I mean, that's where offenses have changed. You know, everyone's always, well, you got to get the ground game going. It'll open up the pass play. I'm like, well, shoot, if the ground game's not there, then the pass game should be there.
Air it out.
So throw it. So that's what I think Eastern's going to do. In fact, how do I say it? I can pretty much guarantee you they're going to make Cam beat them. They're just, you know, I don't think anyone likes matchups thinking of, you know, Roberts and a Kem and, you know, those guys on the edge one-on-one, but I think you'd rather take that than just let someone run it down your throat. I mean, I don't think they're worried about, they're not saying, hey, make a Kem beat us. They're saying, make Cam beat us. You know, make him make right reads, the right throws, be accurate with it. So that's why I said, and I want to be clear. I like Cam. I think Cam's talented. I knew him out of high school. He was in the 7-on circuit, you know, played for FSP. I mean, I've known Cam. I think he's extremely talented. I just think it's been, you know, the definition of like sweet and sour. Like you see some plays where you're like, whoa, that's at a level where you could go make money playing this sport after college. And then other plays where you're like, what, like, I don't even explain to me why you did that, you know? And for Montana fans, they need to get a lot more of that first one this weekend than the latter if they're going to beat Eastern.
Yeah, it'll be one hell of a game. My next question for you, you've been around the Big Sky Conference for a while. There's a lot of things changing. I know Southern Utah's leaving. I know Sam Houston State's looking to go to the FBS. Where do you see the future of the Big Sky Conference in football going?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think just the direction of college football, period, with you know, realignments of conferences and divisions and programs moving up, others moving down, you know, others, you know, changing where they're at. I mean, in the Big Sky, Southern Utah was very similar to me, like what North Dakota was. Like they're in there, but is it really a fit? I mean, like I look at the I-5 corridor and then, you know, east to Idaho and Montana, those make a lot more sense of being in a conference. And, you know, the Montana schools are the heavy hitters in the conference with just the power of those programs and the prestigiousness of it. So I think a lot of things are going to be driven by decisions, you know, those schools, you know, make where they want to be, who they want in there. I just think everyone's important, you know, but I think some people are more important. And it's just going to be interesting to see. I mean, Portland State, I remember years ago, people were talking about them shutting their football program down, period. And then Barnum comes in and has that one Barney Ball year and they go crazy and he gets a extension and a pay raise and, you know, and everyone was ecstatic. And then, you know, they started losing again. And so some programs you look at and you go, man, would they be better even going down to a Division II level? Some of them you say, hey, would it be better being in a different conference where they could, you know, be more competitive? Others you go, should they move up a level? You know, do they go to a different conference? So there's so many variables that I just don't know. You know, I'm not in those meetings with the league and administrations of schools knowing what numbers look like in other sports. And, you know, I've seen in life, there's a lot of people that are driving a nice car and you think, man, they're balling and they're broke, you know, or one of the richest guys I've ever been around. I remember first time I saw him, he was in a Harley Davidson t-shirt. It was ripped. He had some cargo shorts on. He had a scruffy beard. And then, you know, a month later, I'm flying on his private jet, you know, so I just, looks can be deceiving. So with these program schools, there's just so many factors that go into it that I just don't know. So it's hard to say, but it's always entertaining because change is inevitable. I mean, change is inevitable. Changes are going to happen, and the schools, the programs, the people that are successful are the ones that understand that. And instead of complaining about the change, you just say, okay, this is the change. Okay, it is what it is. What's the best strategy from here moving forward?
I got you. Yeah, that's awesome. Speaking of change, obviously today was the news about Lincoln Riley going to USC. There's some movement going on in the Pac-12 and people moving west. Who do you think needs to take over University of Washington next season. Because I saw an article and it said how the Big Ten was down a couple years ago, whatever. Then they had Urban, Franklin came there, Harbaugh. And now you see they're a top conference. What do you think? Who needs to take over UW, and what do you think needs to happen for the Pac-12 to like make their way back up?
Well, a couple things to that. I always am careful on this because anything I say on social media, then I get blasted. I mean, Washington State, Nick Rolovich is one of my very good friends, right? So I just comment after they won the Apple Cup saying, hey, what Dicker did was great, but Rolo, hired the staff. It's his systems. He brought in a lot of the players that kind of fill in some gaps, and I just got butchered on social media. So like saying coaches, I don't even like speculating saying it because then people start hitting me with all the reasons I'm wrong. I will say this. I think for Washington strategically, I think everyone is talking about, hey, they need to go get this big name and that'll help, drive excitement in the brand. And I kind of laugh at that because with fans, I'm like, you guys keep talking about what a prestigious big time program this is. So you don't need a big name coach to prove that. You need a coach to come in and recruit the right players and to coach the good players in this great program you're saying you have. So I look at SC when they hired Pete Carroll. That was not a sexy, pick.
Yeah.
I mean, that fan base was livid. They hated that Pete Carroll hire. People really did. They might have deleted all of that now, or a couple years later, but if you would have gone back and seen the things they were saying at that time, they hated it. But he was perfect because USC is a big time program. It was just get excitement, get the right kids, coach them. And when you start winning, people want to be part of that. That's when you talk about Franklin and you talk about Harbaugh and Urban. I mean, Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State, it's not like once those guys came there, now those are big time programs. We grew up knowing those were big time programs, right? They just kind of gone up and down. It was the coaches that were successful were the ones that, got the right recruits in for their systems and just did a great job of coaching, So to me, Washington, the strategy has to be, you're going to be able to get great recruits. You've got great resources, all of that. Get a great coach and a staff that recruit players to their system, and winning solves everything. You start winning, no one cares what you dress like, what your politics are. It doesn't matter. They want to win. Now, that being said, the Lincoln Riley hired at SC, I feel like SC is a little different. They're a big time program, but it's LA. So bringing in a big name like that, I think in recruiting, I think the recruiting market in like Southern Cal is a lot more fickle than the Northwest. So yeah, bringing in Lincoln to SC might change some recruits, put position on things. And, I'm feeling for the Oklahoma fan base.
Man,
rivalry game, you lose a chance at the playoffs. And then, less than 24 hours later, your coach chucks up the deuces.
I have a feeling though. I feel like Caleb Williams low key might follow him at USC. I got a feeling on it. I don't know if it's gonna happen, but
man, imagine him at SC with Lincoln in that system throwing to the athletes he'd have at SC, and in that city he'd be a superstar. I mean, he already is a superstar. He's already a freak, but in LA.
As we wrap this up, you mentioned recruiting and how you run football camps and also 7-on-7s and kind of help people in Washington and stuff like that with recruiting. What are your thoughts on the whole NIL? Because I know NIL is a thing right now. Not a lot of people know what to do about it. I mean, it came so quickly right before the season, but it's going to come a lot after too. And you even got people from high school skipping their senior year, going to college early. Just kind of talk about all of that, the NIL and stuff, and how it's affected you as well.
Well, I wish it was around when I was,
Man,
I was in high school and college, and but that's what I talk about. Change is inevitable. It's never going to stay the same. And in recruiting, NIL and the money is changing things and is really going to change things as people start to figure out their strategy in it. I think there were some programs that had a little bit more foresight to put things in place and be able to use that in recruiting. Like, hey, we've got this team ready. When you come in, we're going to do this for branding and get you connected with this. And so for recruits and family, especially families that don't have much means, when they're hearing that, all of a sudden that now becomes more appealing than certain things that were being sold 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I remember Oregon, was it about 10 years ago, they were like changing the game in having different uniforms every game and uniform reveals and all of that. And now that's standard.
Yeah.
So it's just, in this, there's going to be people that figure out strategies that are going to be more advantageous to them in recruiting than other programs. So I don't always love all the changes to rules, to, I think in targeting rules, I think there are certain things that need to be modified in that. I hate how a kick can be going in for a tackle and someone lowers their head and now you go and now it's a penalty and you're ejected from the game.
Yeah.
And so, but change is inevitable. So it's understanding. What I'm always intrigued by is to see, how do people adapt, and pivot and strategize, moving forward. So with NIL, Bryce Young is now a millionaire. He signed a 7-figure, endorsement deal. So all of a sudden now you have this freshman who is making more than the coaches on his staff and is living a college life. I mean, imagine I'd have gotten in really good with any of those guys. I'd been like, hey, parties at their house, he's picking up meal taps, but I think there's good and bad, like there is to anything. Where my mindset is in everything is, you can identify the good and the bad and make your case to it, but it doesn't change that that's now the new reality. So you might as well, put that to the side and figure out, how do you strategize moving forward and be ahead of the game.
Yeah, Bryce Young just beat Auburn, probably going to win the Heisman. He's going to make so much more money after this season too.
Crazy.
Which is going to be ridiculous. I appreciate you coming on again. What does the future hold for you the rest of the year and as 2022 comes and onward?
So it's really interesting because for me, during football season, I do all this media stuff. Then from January through August, which is the football off season, now I'm in my season for running events. So I have, you mentioned 7 on, I do tournaments in Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Alaska. We just announced one in LA. Wow. And then we're going to keep in areas. We do college showcases. We do one in Anchorage, Alaska, one in Portland, Oregon, one in Seattle, QB events. So I just kind of always it's like a on-off switch, like boom, on is in football season media, off is now my in season for off-season training. And so I have that balance, and I've just steadily kind of grown my business and brand. How can I be better next year than I was this year? What did I do well? How do I build on that? What did I not do well? And do I scrap it, or what do I need to change to improve it? So it's just going through that. And frankly, bro, just enjoying life. I got my wife and kids, and I think it's a balance, a quality of lifestyle to me too. I'm chasing the business, and money makes the world go around. You got to have it for a lot of things, but also, I went through a surgery where I had less than a coin flip chance to live. And when you're faced in that situation and environment, you realize, like, when you're sitting on, about to go into a surgery where you have less than a coin flip chance to live, it doesn't matter what's in my bank account. It doesn't matter, what my status is. It matters, what are people going to say about me, when I'm gone, and what are the marks and legacy I left. So I love working with kids and helping influence, their life in sports and just in life. I love doing the media stuff where I can shine a spotlight on the coaches in games and, the kids. I love doing this kind of stuff with guys like you who are, you're trying to build your brand and your name. So I love being part of all of this.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, and it's dope that you keep helping kids out, especially after time you played and stuff like that. And all that you do, we love hearing your color commentating on Root Sports as well. And I appreciate you doing this. Any last remarks for you as well? And also, I'd be shooting myself in the leg if I didn't say, if Root Sports is looking for any intern or any sideline reporter or anything like that, let me know, because I'm a senior. So, let me know if you need anyone.
Good deal. Listen, bro, there is always a need everywhere for good people. And it's more important to me, and I'll leave it with this in the business world, more important to me than someone's resume and what they've done is their reliability, their ambition. And I think ambition is a good thing. Like, where do you want to get to? And will you sacrifice everything to get there? I run my events. My son is 4.5. My wife gave birth to him on a Friday. In Seattle. I had an event in Spokane the next day. I was at that event, and my wife understands it. This is the job. This is what I want to do. So I'm talking to you. You're a sharp guy. You're doing a good job with this podcast. So in developing connections in the coaching world. So you stay on and you stay hungry. You'll write your own ticket, bro.
I appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely keep in touch, and I'm a little biased. Hopefully Montana's the one holding the trophy at the end. We can have another discussion, another podcast after. So
listen, I'll be a happy man, and I will happily jump on another podcast with you if Montana wins it or any Big Sky school wins it.